Hello everyone, welcome back. Today we will be reviewing the tropical outlook in the Atlantic and the Pacific, as well as our new model guidance and our storm prediction center for this tropical system. So let's go ahead and get into it. So here we are starting off right now. This system is a tropical depression with winds up to 35 miles an hour. And this is over Cuba currently, but it is expected to be a tropical storm around 8 a.m. Sunday as it continues to move towards portions of the Florida Panhandle. And we actually have hurricane watches up, as this is supposed to get to hurricane strength, even though this area only says it's supposed to be a tropical storm, but it is supposed to get to hurricane strength, have at least gusts around 80 miles an hour. So it is supposed to make a landfall, and this was scooted a little bit north, so this is supposed to make a landfall near the Big Bend area of Florida, and then get back out over portions of the Atlantic for a little while, and then make a secondary landfall in possibly South Carolina. But it could make a secondary landfall even in places like Georgia, so we will have to watch for that. But I'm gonna take this in a closer look here in just a second. But first, let's take a look at our flash flooding potential. And there's actually a moderate risk of flash flooding, which is at least a 40% chance. And this does include Charleston, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, and Jacksonville, Florida. And so let's take a look at our rainfall rates, or what they will most likely be. And we could get up to 12 inches near portions like Savannah, and possibly even up near 16 inches in areas like Charleston. So let's go and take a closer look at the storm surge. We could have portions up to 5 feet, a little to the south of the Ocala River. Sorry, I don't know exactly how to say that. And then we could have up to 4 feet all the way down near Tampa Bay and Charlotte Harbor as well. So let's take a closer look at this on satellite. Here's our system right now over portions of Cuba, and it is sparking a good amount of convection here. And I do believe that this area is going to be able to most likely get back over portions of Cuba as it then crosses over into the Gulf of Mexico and strengthen. And I do believe it's supposed to be, and I do believe that we will be able to get to a lower end Category 1, if not maybe even a mid grade Category 1, as this is supposed to be a 70-mile-per-hour tropical storm as it makes landfall. But I'm very, very set that it will be a low end hurricane as it makes landfall. So this is supposed to strengthen up to a 35, well, excuse me, this is a 35 mile per hour tropical depression that is supposed to strengthen to a 45 mile per hour tropical storm around 8 a.m. on Sunday. Then we will keep this moving, and it is supposed to be able to make it to about a 60 mile per hour tropical storm at around 8 p.m. on Sunday, and then strengthen into a 70 mile per hour tropical storm around 8 a.m. on Monday if it is not stronger. And then it is supposed to go into portions of Georgia and get back out over the water as about a 40 to 45 mile per hour tropical storm and strengthen back up to 65 miles per hour as it then makes a landfall somewhere near Charleston. But this is the cone, so it could make a secondary landfall all the way back in Florida or all the way up into portions of North Carolina, so we will just have to watch for that as well. So here's the GFS model starting off around August 3rd. So here we are. Keep this moving. There's our low pressure as it then gets down to tropical storm, if not maybe a low end hurricane. So let's get closer. And yeah, this looks like it'd be most likely a strong tropical storm, maybe a low in Category 1 hurricane, as it then impacts portions of Georgia and the Carolinas, gets back out over the ocean, and then makes it may possibly go south as it then strengthens to possibly a Category 2, borderline major Category 3 hurricane, as it then makes a secondary landfall at about the Savannah River and just lashes portions of um, of southern Georgia, about where that line meets of South Carolina. With, I guess you could call it an eye wall, because it could and most likely would be a hurricane if it did this, and then moves out, goes into portions of South Carolina and North Carolina, gets back over the ocean and gets out of there. And then we will have to watch maybe for a secondary system back in Texas, but we're not going to speak on that too much. So next up is a European model. This only goes out about 90 hours, but this should be good. And it doesn't really strengthen it too much, maybe to a tropical storm as it then makes a landfall. So let's zoom in. As it makes landfall, tropical storm, and then maybe strengthens a little bit over land. And that's not very that's not very common, but it can happen sometimes as it then strengthens and then seems like it just kind of stalls out and lashes portions of near Savannah, Georgia. So let's keep this moving. Next up, the Canadian model. Here it is. This does make it to a tropical storm around 2 a.m. on August 5th. And then here it goes. And this takes a more northern route at first, and then kind of stalls and just kind of stays over the Carolinas and doesn't seem to do too much. So next up is the Icon model. Here it is about a tropical storm, and this we'll keep this moving, and it does get down to tropical storm status around August 4th, and then does eventually make it to tropical storm, a strong tropical storm, and then does go over portions of Georgia as a tropical storm, and does strengthen a little bit off the coast, down most likely to a Category 1 and Category 2 hurricane, as it then makes a secondary landfall in North Carolina, and then does impact portions of Delaware and New Jersey as well, as then it moves on out to sea. So next up is one of the hurricane models. This is the HFA model, and this is verifying pretty well south of Cuba, which is where it is right now. And then we will keep this moving, and there is the southern tip of Florida right there. You got Key West right there at the bottom of your screen. And then we'll keep this moving. This gets to tropical storm status, and then might even be able to make it to hurricane status as it makes a landfall. And wow, look at these bands. This is definitely going to be a big tornado threat. Definitely in portions of Florida and Georgia as well, where you have all those highlighted oranges and reds and purples. That's where you're going to have those tornadic areas in these bands, where we can have lots of quick spin ups that can be very dangerous because it's very hard to see them on radar as they happen so fast, and they're usually in between radar scans. So keep this moving. It will start to lose some strength, but still maintains about tropical storm status as it then moves over portions of South Carolina, and then most likely will either maybe be able to make it out to sea or just continue to ride over the Carolinas with that tornado threat. So next up is the HFB model, south of Cuba, verifying pretty well. And then there's the southern tip of Florida on your screen. And we will keep this moving. This does get it to tropical storm status, and then even to a low-end Category 1. And yeah, that tornado threat, I can imagine, is going to be very, very bad in portions of Florida and Georgia as well. All those areas I just circled. That's where this is showing those tornadic bands. We'll keep this moving, and then maintains tropical storm status, and then most likely maybe weakens down to a strong tropical depression, but maybe a weak tropical storm. Then gets back out over the coast, strengthens a little bit, and makes a secondary landfall back in portions of Georgia. So next up is the National Weather Service map. This shows all of our current advisories, watches, and warnings. And these red colors on your screen down here, those are our tropical storm watches, as well as this red area are our tropical storm warnings, where these pinkish areas are our tropical storm watches. So let's go ahead and zoom into that. So these dark reds, so Tampa, you're under a tropical storm warning, but then these lighter pinks, that's just a tropical storm watch, and then this tannish color, that is a um, hazardous weather outlook, and then a hurricane local statement for that as well. So let's take a look at the Storm Prediction Center for today. We actually have a marginal risk down in portions of Florida, and that is from our tropical system. And we do have a small 2% tornado risk down there, but we don't have any other risks down in Florida, but just a 2% tornado risk. And even though that seems low, that they only have it low because the chance for strong tornadoes is not high. But there will definitely be, most likely, many spin-up tornadoes. And then we have a slight risk in portions of the southeast going up the east coast as well. And then we have another slight risk that doesn't almost includes Minneapolis, Minnesota. And there is actually a 15% wind risk in both of those slight risk areas, and then a 15% hail risk in that northern slight risk area with a hatched risk. So that means there could be a 10% chance for hail and 2 inches in diameter or larger. And then we have a smaller marginal risk in portions of Texas with a 5% wind risk and a 5% hail risk. So next, this is the day 2 severe weather outlook. We have a larger marginal risk that does include Orlando, Tampa, and Jacksonville, Florida for that 2% tornado risk. And then we have 2 other marginal risks. These are smaller. One in portions of Montana, and then the other one in portions of Minnesota. And both of these have a 5% wind risk, and then the one in Minnesota has a 5% hail risk. Next up is the day 3 severe weather risk. We have another marginal risk that does include Savannah, Georgia, and Jacksonville, Florida. And there is a 5% severe weather risk down there. And I assume it will most likely be for a 2% tornado risk. But I think the day 3 and possibly the day 2 risks could get an upgrade to a slight risk, which is what they usually do. They usually go ahead and put out the marginal risk a few days earlier, and then they'll probably add a slight risk somewhere into here. So most likely, if they did add a slight risk, I assume that Tampa and possibly Jacksonville or Orlando would be included in that. And then same with the day 3 risk, I could see a smaller slight risk that does include Jacksonville as well. And then I could see that marginal risk getting extended out further west a little bit more. And if they did add a slight risk for the day 2 and day 3, I would think that there would be a 5% tornado risk on those. And last but not least is the Eastern Pacific. I do want to take a look at this as we have we have 3 areas of tropical we have 3 tropical areas, one of which has a 90% chance to develop in the next 7 days, and then a 60% chance in the next 48 hours. And then we have a hurricane and a tropical storm. So let's talk about Carlotta first. This is a 90-mile-per-hour hurricane, and this is not supposed to do too much to any land masses. But then let's look at Daniel. And then this is not supposed to do too much either, besides maybe bring some high waves. So if you are on a boat, you do want to watch out for that. Alright, so one more look at our tropical cone for PTC, not PTC anymore, but Tropical Depression 4. And those blue areas, that's a tropical storm warning. The yellow area, that's a tropical storm watch. And then that lighter pink is a hurricane watch. So yeah, we will have to watch for possible 2 landfalls. So which way will it go once it makes a landfall in Florida? Will it go north into portions of the Carolinas? Or will it come back south and possibly come back and hit Florida? Or will it come out, stall, and then turn back and hit portions of Georgia again? So that will just be an interesting thing to watch. So with that, thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one, everybody.